Hello dear learners, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to talk about yet another interesting topic of Spring Framework, and that is Aspect Oriented Programming, or AOP as we all know it. Now, Aspect Oriented Programming is no different way of programming. You must be thinking we have learned so many different types of programming, starting with structural programming, then object oriented programming, functional programming, and now this is another one more way of programming. Believe me, it is not that. It is always said that whenever you are writing an object oriented program, two things are to be kept in mind. That is, the code needs to have loose coupling or very low coupling, and it needs to have high cohesion. That is, the codes need to be highly cohesive. Now, for implementing loose coupling, Spring has already provided us a way, and that is inversion of control, which allows us to reduce the coupling in our code and make it independent of each other. Now, aspect-oriented programming is going to cater to the other part of it. That is, it will provide us in writing highly cohesive code. Now, how is that going to happen? Imagine you're writing a code. Let's say you're writing a code on a banking program, right? Now, this particular banking class has a method called as withdraw, deposit, and let's say show the details of the account. Now, usually when we start writing code like this, rather than just writing code related to the account, that is withdraw, deposit, and show account details, there are a lot of other things that we add up to the code. That is, we add codes related to logging, we add codes related to transaction, pooling, and a lot of other things. This is our primary problem, okay, when we write the code. That is, there are a lot of different set of codes which are included in the same code that you have. That is, even the logging part is included in it, even the transaction part is included in it. So the main concern that is of the program, or the main area to which the program is supposed to cater to, is not getting handled here. Okay, that is our primary problem when we write the code. Aspect oriented programming will help us to resolve this. So let's go ahead and understand what exactly is aspect oriented programming. So what is AOP, or aspect oriented programming? Aspect oriented programming will help you in implementing modularity in our code, right? It will help us to separate our code in different modules so that the code which is not related to the actual problem statement is separated out from the code, right? So it breaks, as I said earlier, the program into more cohesive parts called as concerns. Now, this is a very important word for us, concerns. Now, concerns are basically this additional logic that is not the part of the main domain logic, isn't it? So it is used, or rather AOP will be used to reduce this concern and increase the modularity by cross-cutting these concerns. So what a cross-cutting concern is, basically it is a concern that can affect the whole application and should be centralized in one location in code as possible. So what is this? It is basically writing a part of a code which does not belong to the business logic in the part of the code where the actual business logic is. I'll show you that with an example and it will become more clear, right? So let's see an example. So let's say if you have a code which has a presentation logic, it has a business logic, and it has data access logic. Now, over this main logic or the main business logic of our code, there are a lot of other codes which we need to write. That is, we need to implement the logic for transaction, we need to implement logic for security, for logging purpose, etc. Now, these parts, even though important to our code, because we cannot write a code without transaction, right? We cannot have a code that does not have security. We also need to write logging related codes because we need to know where our code started, where it ended, how it performed. So we need logging related code also. So these are important parts of our code, but then they are not a part of the business logic. But yet, when we start writing the code, all these set of codes are included in the classes which contain the business logic. So that's our primary problem, or you can say that's our primary cross-cutting concern. AOP will help us in resolving this. That is, we will not start writing our cross-cutting concerns everywhere in the code. So in every part of the code, you will not go and start writing it. AOP will allow us to give places wherein we can call these codes at specific locations of our business logic. Like, for example, if I talk about transaction is something which will be needed, before, we try to commit our data into the RDBMS, and even after that. So we need to, any database related code that we are writing, we will need to, put it inside a transaction. So it needs to, so the database code that I'm talking about needs to come in between the transaction. So AOP will help us in introducing or injecting the transaction code before and after the database logic that we have, right? So it will allow us to separate the transaction code from the database code and yet insert it at the correct locations when it is needed. That's the primary advantage that you get through AOP. I'll repeat once again, AOP will give us an advantage of separating out these codes like transaction code, security code, login code from the actual business logic code into separate classes. Plus, it will allow us to inject them at the correct location wherever they are needed. Like as I said, transaction code will be needed before and after the database code that we have, right? So that is what it will help us in. Okay. So going further, what is our problem? Now I've already spoken a lot about the problem, but still I'll take a quick recap of it. That suppose we have some XYZ business logic in our code. Okay. Now along with this business logic, we most of the times embed a lot of other code or a lot of other logic like logging, transaction management, user checking, whether the valid user has logged in or not. So basically user checking is what we have here. This kind of logic that cross-cuts or overlaps the existing business logic is nothing but a concern or a cross-cutting concern. So you must have seen a lot of such code written wherein in that same class wherein I am writing my business logic, in that same class I am even writing a code to validate my user. I'm writing in the same code, I'm writing the logging code. In the same code, I'm writing even, code wherein I'm starting a transaction and committing the transaction and rolling back my transaction. So in that same code, I'm dumping everything. Correct. So, which is not the correct way of programming. This way, the code is not cohesive at all because everything is now dumped into the same code. AOP will help us in separating this out. Okay. And yet calling it at the correct locations. Okay. So, further, now there is a very important, term when it comes to AOP, that is aspect. As the whole name itself says, you can see here it is aspect-oriented programming. Now, in a normal Java code, our, you can say the most modular, unit is going to be a class. A class is what talks about modularity. So, our whole code is divided into different classes, and they contain each and every module that we want to implement. But when it comes to AOP, the unit of modularity is not a class, but it is an aspect. Now, an aspect can contain more than one classes. Okay, that is why it is a separate unit of modularity, and this enables us in modularizing the concerns. As I've already told, like transaction management, user verification or validation, or any such extra logic that we have beyond our business logic. Okay, and these aspects, they will enable us in modularizing these concerns that cut across the multiple types of objects. Okay, so here you can see a cross-cutting concern is nothing but an aspect. Okay, so that is what it is. So going further, let's see if I have two sets of code, a code without AOP and a code with AOP, how is it going to be different? So if you see here this diagram, I have my code here, my business logic. So let's say if I have a banking application, my withdraw, deposit, show statement, all those methods are going to be here. And these are my concerns like security, logging, persistence, even user validation and verification. So a lot of other concerns that I have. So here you can see my code is, so tightly coupled with my business logic code. So here you can see I have logging code first, then I have security code, then I have persistence code, again I have logging code, again a logging code at the end. In the other classes also you can see similarly in the same code I have written the concerns also, right? So that is what is our problem. You can see in the same code everything is so tightly coupled, which is our problem. Code, when we write with AOP, you can see there are two different set of codes. One set of classes which contain our business logic, whereas other set of classes which is containing our concern logic. That is a logic which talks about our security, or logic that talks about our logging, or logic that talks about our persistence. So you can see three different classes here, and AOP helps us in injecting them at the correct location wherever needed, right? So that is what. So AOP will help us in separating out this code from the business logic. So So the business logic code will contain only the business logic part. It will not contain this additional information. As you can see here, everything is just dumped into the same class, which is not true here. These classes will only contain 3 methods. Let's say if I have to implement withdraw, deposit and show statement. Okay. Whereas there will be separate classes which will be implementing these additional concerns that I have. Again, remember these concerns are very important part of my code, but they are not a part of my business logic. That is why I need to separate them out from the business logic. Okay. So this is not something that we can just ignore from our code, just remove it out from our code and it's okay. It's not going to be okay. You will need to have this logic also into your code, but bring, writing them in the same code as our business logic is our problem. Okay. That is what we are separating out from here. Okay. So this is a difference. You can pause the video for a minute and check this out and see if you are able to understand this. If you have any questions on this concept, you can, write them down in the comment section below and I'll answer them for you. Or you can even, join our Telegram group and, ask your questions there and I'll answer to your questions. Yeah. Going further, now solution through AOP. We've already seen the solution through AOP that it helps you in isolating these cross-cutting concerns from the application code or the business logic code, and thereby it helps us in modularizing the entities from each other. Also, it does not mean that because the cross-cutting code has been externalized from the actual implementation, the implementation now does not get the required add-on functionalities. That's what I said earlier also, that because we are externalizing it, because we are separating it out from the main logic, does not mean that particular logic will not be able to come at that particular point. It will definitely come at exactly that point. If you see here, if I want my login code in the very beginning of it, AOP will allow me to have my login code at the very beginning of it. After that, my security code, AOP will allow me to have my security code after that, and only then it will, call my actual business logic. So I will be able to implement this kind of flow with AOP also. My AOP is not going to stop me from having such a flow. It is just helping me in separating out that additional logic. Okay, so that's what this whole point means here. So there are ways in which you can specify the relation between the actual business code and the concerns, as I said earlier, using various techniques. So we will see those techniques also in our future videos, wherein we will see how both these separate, even if they are separate codes, how are they integrated into one and, they come out as the final actual logic that we want for our code to implement. So we will definitely see that when we, see our examples and when we see the further concepts with AOP. Now, as I said, there are going to be a lot of concepts that we're going to learn in future. So these are some of the concepts that we're going to learn, like aspect is there, join point is there, advice is there, point cut is there, introduction, target object, AOP proxy, weaving, so on and so forth. So there are a lot of such concepts that we are going to learn in our future video, and we will see how they are implemented, what exactly these concepts are, and how do they help us in implementing the whole concept of AOP in our code. And how do they simplify the whole, logic of separating out the concerns from the actual business logic. So, that is it in today's video. In our future video, we will be talking about these AOP concepts and we'll see an example of each of these concepts in our code, okay, and how they are implemented. So, stay tuned. Also, I would request each and every, viewer or learner to go through the entire video end to end, because there are a lot of small hints, lot of small tips, and lot of small ideas and shortcuts and lot of things that I talk about during the video, which you might miss if you do not watch the entire video. So I would request each and every one of you to watch the entire video completely, so that those small little diamonds, I can say, you're not missing on. Yeah. So I request each and every viewer, each and every learner to view the video completely. Also, if you like my content, please like my videos, share it with your friends who, would want to learn Spring concepts, and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed yet, so that you can keep getting such videos in future. That is it for today. Thank you. Bye-bye.